I want to share with you now what I consider to be one of the most important pieces of information I ever received in a spiritual context. It's so important, in fact, this message that I'm going to share with you. It's so important that every one of the world's great religions agrees on this particular point. There's a lot of conflict or contrast, at the very least, between the world's great religions. We know that in the fine print, when it gets down to the fine points, almost all the world's great religions disagree with each other. But here's a point on which not a single religion disagrees. That is, every major religion on the face of the earth teaches what I'm going to share with you now. It's also a fundamental teaching of conversations with God. So let's take a close look at this. Let's really explore this one deeply, because this is not unimportant. This is not trivial. Your understanding of what I'm going to share with you now and the way you hold it in your experience could impact and shape the experience of the rest of your life. Okay? Here's the message. Death does not exist. Now, every great religion says the same thing. Death does not exist. Every great religion talks about an afterlife, that is, life after death. Every great religion talks about the aspect of the individual that some religions refer to as the spirit or the soul. And most of the world's great religions teach us that when the body does the thing called die, that we call death, when the body dies, the soul continues to exist. And not for a little while, not for a short period of time. But in fact, most of the world's religions teach that the soul exists forever, eternally, without end. So the question in the teachings of most of the world's religions is not whether life continues forever, but how. In what way? What is how would I put this, the quality of that life? Is it a good life that goes on forever? Or is it not such a good life? Or to put it in theological terms, are we in paradise or in heaven, living in bliss? Or are we in that other place, Hades or hell, living in misery and suffering and eternal terror? Or are we maybe, as some religions would have it, in a third place, at least for a while, that some religions call purgatory, kind of a limbo place between heaven and hell, kind of a suburb of these two other locations in the afterlife. I'm not trying to make fun of it, I'm just explaining to you in the best way I can that these are the teachings of some of the world's great religions. And I've wondered about this whole idea of death most of my life, as have many people. I haven't met many people, there are some, but I haven't met many who are not fascinated, at least at some level, who are not intrigued, at least at some level, about this experience called death. We ask questions like, why does death even have to happen? Why can't we just live forever? Or what occurs after death, and what's true about all of that? And I'm one of those people. I've been wondering about that for a very long time, as I said, for most of my adult life. So finally, when I was having my conversations with God, I simply asked God these questions. And God gave me a collection of answers, a long list of answers, so long that it created an entire book. And it's a book that I really want to commend to your reading. I want to suggest and recommend that you read it if you have an interest in this topic of death and what happens after death, if you have the same kind of interest that I have had in my life. The book is called Home with God in a Life That Never Ends. Yes, the title again, Home with God in a Life That Never Ends. And it helps to expand and explore and explain the new theology of conversations with God and the differences between what conversations with God is sharing with us and what is shared with us by most of the world's great religions. I began my inquiry, I began my own personal investigation into this topic by asking God simply, what is death? What is death anyway? And God said something to me that I never heard from any other source before in my life. It was a really interesting response. And here's what God said. God said, Neale, death is merely a process of re-identification. Have you ever heard that before? I found it fascinating to hear such a response. Death is a process of re-identification. It's a process through which we change our identity from what we thought we were or understood ourselves to be, that's true for most people, to what we actually are, to our real identities.